Today we are discussing something no parent ever wants to face. Prescription drug abuse among children in our community continues to grow at an alarming rate. In fact, it is a national epidemic, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Because of that, we have developed a 4-part series covering just a slice of what is happening in and around Mission Viejo. In this final part of our series, we will uncover what can be done in the future to keep our youth from crossing an invisible line.
I got to tell you, the reason for all this, the reason I'm doing what I'm doing, are 2 reasons. One is preventable. These deaths are needless and they are preventable. And number 2 is I don't want another family to go through what we're going through, the devastation. And you know, these kids that I deal with that are addicts every day, that call me, their mothers that call me for help, these are good kids. They're making poor choices. And I have my website, onechoiceCanDestroy.com, because it's all about the choices that they're making. And it's just, they have their whole life ahead of them, and they're smart, and they've got everything going for them. They are so polite, they're respectful. When I talk to them, they are just good kids. Most of them are.
What do you tell young people that call you that are in the middle of their addiction? Because you get phone calls. I mean, your phone number's out there.
Yeah, I get them every week, all the time, constantly. It's nonstop. It's in the water out here. It's everywhere. And they have to want the help. And I try to talk to them about that. You know, you have to want it. And I will get you the help if you want it. And I've gotten them the help. But their brains aren't fixed. And they crave it so badly that they don't stay in long enough. Or the families they can't afford it, so they're only in for 30 days, and that isn't long enough. They have to stay in for a good year, at least a year, I feel, before they can start really functioning out and about and getting a job. That's what I would have to tell parents out there, is to not be in denial. If they do find their son or daughter smoking marijuana, I now realize that that is a gateway drug, and to don't stop testing them, to continue testing them, to have them get counseling for it. They're doing it for a reason, and have them checked out, and just make them stop if you can, because it can lead to other drug use. Jared said he wasn't even getting high off the marijuana. He didn't even feel it. That's how, because he did it so long. And so he turned to the opiates because he wanted to feel that high.
Do you still get phone calls from parents?
All the time. I get phone calls and emails and you name it, all the time from parents. And it's just sad because they cannot afford the help for their kids. And when their kids want it, it's devastating to me, because they want the help and we can't give them the help. So, we need to find a way to stop this, to get the government involved and to get some funding for these families, because it's just going to be a cycle. They just can't afford it. They're in for 30 days. Again, it's not long enough. They have to stay in longer. It's to the communication. Ask your kids questions. Communicate with your kids all the time, and have them stay home for dinner. I find that's a very good tool, is dinner time, and that's when we all talk around the table.
Make sure you have some time with your kids.
That's right. Communication is the key. They need to get educated, and then they need to communicate with their kids. So in order for them to get educated, they cannot be in denial. They can't be hiding in the closet and saying their kids passed away because of a heart issue. They need to come forward, because the more that come forward, the more grassroots, the more that will get developed, and will cure this problem. It can be cured, if we all get together and work on it together. We can't do it alone. We need help.
So you took your grief and you got very purposeful, and you put together that poster, and a
mother of 4 named Christine Brandt. She saw the poster up in a window, and she gave me a call, and we met at Starbucks, and then we were talking about needing something for the schools, and we decided we need a documentary made. So I knew a lot of the kids that were addicts, that are clean, and we got them together and we decided to produce a film called Overtaken for schools. I have copies of Overtaken available on my website, which is called One Choice Can Destroy. That's ONE, onechoiceCanDestroy.com, and I have several resources there if you need them, and you can ask me for help there as well.
Are you finding that the parents came to you or talked with you or said anything? What were their reactions when Capital Unified started down this path of really zeroing in on these issues?
Well, I think there's probably a predictable response when you have a child that is engaging in drug use or illegal prescription drug use. And it probably begins with some denial. This couldn't be happening in my family. But when you see this film, you see kids that look like kids who live in our neighborhoods and in our communities and are otherwise healthy and attractive. And you hear their stories about what happened to them in spite of coming from very supportive environments. And it just reinforces the importance of our communities coming together and working together to deal with this. And denial is not going to accomplish a single thing. I think the parents in our district are really, really involved in their schools, and that was the factor that contributed to the success of this film and its showing here. They care deeply about their kids and about their instructional program, about their activities, what they're doing. So when word got out that we had a certain percentage of kids that were getting engaged with misuse of prescription drugs, they responded supportively. Recently, we've spent a lot of time on general student safety and in response to some of the things that have occurred in our country. But early identification of any risk behavior of student, and then intervention with assistance when we can, and then obviously prevention so that they don't get into the bad decisions that we're talking about here. Those are always emphasized here in the district and in most districts. Showing a movie one time would not really make a major impact on students' decisions about drug use. But when you incorporate that with having kids that are connected to school and adults that care about children and what we do instructionally in our classrooms, combined, that has more of an impact. We tend to be most focused on punishment, and that's kind of traditional in school systems. You do something and you're punished. And what we're really moving to is not away from that aspect of our responsibility, because sometimes punishment is mandated by law. But we also want to be good at early identification of students who are at risk, no matter what the risk is, and then helping them learn from that bad decision so that they could get back into being a functioning student and a successful student. Let's say a student makes a decision to misuse an illegal drug, and the law dictates that he's to be suspended and expelled for a period of time and then returned to campus. That would be the kind of base response that we would be required to have. Well, we're trying to figure out what actually may be in the best long-term interest of the student in addition to the punishment. So we will identify counseling, maybe an external advisor or program that can help teach him how to deal with the issue that he's dealing with, and then we'll monitor and provide support when they actually return to school so that they're not just getting right back into what they were doing before. It was a few years ago, but in the past we'd only focus on the punishment, but the student still has the issue. And punishment in and of itself is not a form of reform usually. So we want to get into that help. I would say that there was a period of time early in my superintendencies where parents were not as sophisticated about what was happening with children. It was this could not be, this doesn't happen with children, we don't have that issue in our community. And particularly in Capistrano Unified, I think we have pretty sophisticated parents. There may be some surprise initially when they've learned of some misuse, but they're going to typically respond in whatever it takes to help their child get their act together. And so I wouldn't underestimate their sophistication when it comes to this issue. Most of the parents are younger than me, so 30s and 40s, and they've had some experience typically with these issues, probably more than we did when we were their age.
So now I'm going to ask you for some advice. What can the City of Mission Viejo do to help you and to support your efforts in dealing with the prescription drug abuse?
One of the factors in helping kids stay healthy is keeping them busy. And in fact, that's the advice I give to parents every day. You know, especially in middle school and high school, get them in something, keep them busy, get them in a sport, special activity. Idle time is not your friend when you're at that grade level. But in Mission Viejo, you're doing a number of things with several of our schools to provide after school and summer activities at the schools, and then also in your central library. You devote a certain amount of money to staffing that helps support those activities. So it's those kinds of things, I think, that really make a difference. And it's also something that I believe makes Mission Viejo a very unique and special city. I think for the community and for parents, this kind of education is really important. And really knowing what their kids are doing and being connected with their kids and having the kind of relationship that allows real communication to go on between both parties. I think probably every generation of teenager would say what I'm about to say, but I just have to believe that this is one of the most challenging times to be a teenager with the media that's out there, the social media, the technology, the official and unofficial kinds of communication between kids. I think it's a tough thing to navigate through. And probably the most significant assistance in that world is through that family structure. So family is probably more important than ever.
What is the school district currently doing to help reduce drug abuse in the schools?
Well, I think it's a three-pronged, four-pronged effort. It's about parent education, it's about student education. We really do let the kids know when they come into the schools, through the health classes, through the assemblies, the every 15 minutes that we try and provide, which is at the high schools when it comes to drugs and alcohol. And for students, we really try and make sure that we get the information out health-wise and behavior-wise. We also tell them, if this happens at school, here's the consequence piece. So we really try and stay very comprehensive on how we're trying to get the information out. We do send information out, helping remind students and parents about the dangers of drugs and alcohol. So we tend to send that out if a lot of students are getting into trouble for one particular thing, marijuana, alcohol, pills. So we try and get the information out. We try and send reminders out as we see spikes in behaviors. And we try and send reminders out prior to proms, prior to dances, prior to events where students tend to be pressured into making poor choices.
One of the things that we did was last October is we had an event where we had parents and kids, separated them, and one of the exercises for the young people was to identify, tell us what you want to tell your parents. Just what do you want to tell your parents? And the very first thing was, we want them to start the conversation on drug abuse because we're not going to tell them. We're not going to talk to them about it, and we're not going to start it. But we will talk about it if they start it.
We do promote the Is Your Teen at Risk series, which are typically held through cities or through the law enforcement. We do support and promote the parent projects that the Sheriff's Department runs for teens that are at risk, high risk.
I've heard that those are excellent.
Outstanding.
Everybody that's gone through them, I've heard just raves about them.
The schools typically hold the Spanish parent projects. The Sheriff's Department holds the English parent project, so we really do try and partner and collaborate. So if we hear of promotions or projects, we really do everything we can to support those and promote those.
I think just as parents in general, and I have children as well, we are their example. So look at what you're doing. I'm going to say we're doing, again as a parent. Look at what we're doing. What medications are we taking? Are we having a glass of wine, with an Ambien? Are we leaving our medications just on the kitchen counter? Are we aware of who's coming in and out of the house with our children? Would we notice if any of our medications are missing? What are we doing with our old medications? If you go to the dentist and he gives you 6 Vicodin and you take 1 and you're fine, where's that other 5 Vicodin? Where are they? What are you doing with them? Are you just keeping them around, for the apocalypse or the earthquake? How often you hear that? Well, I don't want to get rid of that. I need to keep that.
Yeah.
So I would just say, just be aware of what you're doing, of what your medications are, and talk to your kids and educate them, and educate yourself first. How much I've learned about this just being a deputy coroner, that then I think of my friends, well, how come you don't know that? How come you aren't locking up your prescriptions or getting rid of them? And
Right.
Unfortunately, the lessons we learn here as the coroner, not everybody else learns. So I would say educate yourself about some of the drug trends or the medications and what's going on.
That the law states that the pharmacist is responsible for the health and well-being of all patients. And that if a person brings in a prescription and it was obtained legally for a phony thing, we see this all the time where these doctors are writing prescriptions and they bring it to us. And he said the law, there's several cases that say if you give that and you have not done your due diligence, or you have an inkling that that's wrong, that you're guilty. And that the DEA has decided that this is a problem in America, and they're beginning the crackdown, and the place that they're cracking down on are the providers, the physicians and the pharmacists. And so we started, and the guy gave an example that said, hey, if you live in South Orange County and you have a patient that comes in with a prescription from Fountain Valley, and it was written by a doctor in Upland, why would you fill that prescription? Why? How many pharmacies would this guy have had to have passed between Upland and South Orange County? And why is he there? And so the first thing you say, I don't think that's right. And they always have a great excuse. I'm here to see my sister. It's not like they're not prepared to tell you something. And so we just made the policy that patient has to live in Mission Viejo, and the doctor has to be in the Saddleback Valley. And that we know who the pain specialist doctors are. We have a great relationship with them. And we know, that their prescriptions are legitimate. And if it falls outside of that, then it just simply can't be filled. If somebody tells you a story that's almost believable and you want to go into the computer, you can go in and see if that person has been to other pharmacies, other doctors, what he's getting. And it's kind of that's becoming a standard of practice, where you should have the ability to go in and check somebody's prescription, drug habit. General Schwarzkopf, who's now passed, I saw him speak, and his speech was, when in charge, take command. When in command, do the right thing. So if you live by that, that means you have to do the right thing. And the right thing is not giving the wrong people prescriptions or somebody that's misguided. And you don't know whether that person's going to take it or sell it or what it is, but you know in your heart that it's wrong. And so what can parents do? Parents can, monitor the medicine that they're taking. It's not necessarily an adult drug, but they may have, older siblings that are taking it for a legitimate reason, and just make sure that it's in a safe place. If you have a party, one of the most common places for people to get drugs is from somebody else's house, not necessarily one you break into. So you should really watch what's in your medicine cabinet if you're going to have guests over, whoever those guests are. And as far as being a parent, that's without a doubt the most challenging job there is. I have 3 children, now 8 grandchildren, and it never gets easy, and you always worry, and you just want to be there to answer the question. It sounds so trite, but somehow or another, you have to build a rapport with your kids. And it's the old adage, you know, you don't have to win every fight, but you want to win the big battle. And be close to them, support them in what they do. You know, there's all kinds of things you can do to supplement their life, you know, rather than complicate their life. When you come home and you're tired, or when you're sick and you're tired, or when there's this or that, or just when you're arguing or unhappy, you have to stop and take time. And if you translate that into your children, that's the most important thing you can do. Whatever that time is, you know, that's the most valuable gift you have. You know, $20 bills and $100 bills and $1,000 checks are meaningless to time. And I think most people will tell you what they enjoy most is the time with their dad or the time with their mom. And sometimes they get to spend more time with their mom. But when the dad has time, that's what he has to share. That's the most valuable thing we have to give. Parents should be aware of all these things that change in their life. You know, that doesn't get asked to the prom or something. There's always something that is going to lead to a change. And that's a perfect opportunity for that parent. If your daughter doesn't get invited to the prom, take her to the Queen Mary. Do something off the wall, you know. Do something to say, you are special and I love you. I think that kids are looking for other forms of excitement. And maybe it's up to the parent to say, some random day, you know, what would you like to do today? You know, would you, and if you go to a baseball game, you don't have to sit behind home plate at Anaheim Stadium or Dodger Stadium or Petco Park. You can just go. It's the experience of going.
We also have Orange County Healthcare Agency, which is, they're a big component with our prescription take-back day, which we do twice a year, along with the DEA, and gather up all the prescription drugs that no one's using, the parents aren't using, or the grandparents aren't using, to be able to dispose of them properly and get them out of the home where they don't belong. Let me explain what the DLO program is real quick. Senator Hutchins, when she ran for office, she wanted to build better relationships with the community. And one thing that to really help do that was establish a DLO, a drug liaison officer, in every contract city, unincorporated area, and obviously our contract cities. So those people in that particular community can have one deputy, or maybe two deputies if they're assigned, to be able to contact, either email or a phone call, and ask any questions about drugs. You know, what is this? How bad is it? My kid's huffing. What can I do? What is this waxing on this marijuana? What is, you know, what are the signs and symptoms of meth? Or how do I know if my kid's under influence? And the deputies can kind of answer those particular questions. And then if they have a family member that needs help, obviously with the outreach programs that I talked about, we can put them in direct contact with them, begin that healing process, and get them the help that they need. And with that, we also, you know, advertise and partner up with the Parent Project, because that's another huge component where they do teach, I think one night, where they come in with and talk about all the different types of drugs, you know, the effects of some of the emerging drug trends, alcohol, prescription, marijuana, some of the new drugs, the synthetic drugs and bath salts, and just try to educate the parents. The kids aren't in the room. We don't want to teach the kids, but the parents what they are, what they look like, maybe the effects, and help them to understand their kids. And don't be afraid to ask their kids. Be curious of where are you going? Who are you hanging out with? Let me check your room. You know, I know what this device is now, because the kids they're internet savvy, and they're much better than we are. Unfortunately, the young people know more about the drugs than we do. And a lot of us, because we're so busy in our, you know, trying to provide for our family and our work life, and sometimes we forget to stay up on those type of things. And it's one way that, to the Parent Project and all these different drug education programs, we try to get the word out and educate the public as much as possible.
So a parent is struggling with behavior changes in their child. They suspect drugs. how do they get in contact with the DLO? How do they start the process to even get questions answered?
One of the things that our community programs was able to do was we had a guy who's our kind of a webmaster help create a DLO web page. If you go on to the Orange County Sheriff's Department, ocsd.org, and you kind of go in there and you can go under the community services and you can click on the DLO web page. And under there, under how we have it listed for every city, we have the city seal. Okay. And right underneath there we have the deputy's name with their contact work number and email. And we want to be a positive role model. Not that we're going to knock down your door and arrest you and take you to jail, but hey, as Sheriff's Department, as deputies, you know, representing the Sheriff's Department, hey, we want to help. How can we help you? Because if we don't get you the help you need, then you end up in our jail and clogging the system and through going down that rough road of life. And if we can get you with some help in the very beginning, maybe we can change that path and you know, have some positive influence on you, that we're not always the bad guy. We're here to help as well.
That's great. Any event that is called Drug Trends and is put on by the Sheriff's Department, that would be a good way for parents to become more educated and get involved with the Sheriff's Department, asking questions and have contacts and that. I know that some of the SROs, that school resource officers that are in our schools, they talk to the kids all the time because they are a presence on the campus, and again, just like you said, trying to be a positive role model, reaching out, talking to the kids, engaging them. They've also had conversations with the parents, so the parents can talk to the SROs who are talking to the kids and stay in contact that way with what's going on. And I think that's great. I think that's
that has been one of our huge things, is to, you know, even when I was on the SMART team, SROs were just starting to begin. It's so important that these SROs, they do build relationships. And some of the DLOs, they also wear the same hat as an SRO, like Kevin Lybrand here in Mission Viejo. I could talk about so many of these different these SROs and DLOs. They do such a phenomenal job because they're approachable. And we want the kids to approach us and talk to us and discuss some of these issues that they might see or, you know, concerned about that their friends may be using or that they themselves have, and that we can get them pointed in the right direction. It doesn't do a whole lot of good to sit there and hammer the kids and arrest them, take them off to jail. We need to help these kids. Obviously there's ones that we do have to take to jail, but there's ones that we want to certainly help. And that's what's great about these DLOs, that people can contact us and we can do a presentation to any group. It doesn't matter what business or group or how small or large a group is. I try to push out as many of these drug educations to the larger population, but certainly this city can hold, and they have held, to bring everybody together, announcement on a certain night and invite everybody in and talk about some of these issues. And you're going to have a deputy who's really who knows a lot of it. Some of these deputies that are they're drug recognition officers. They understand. They've made lots of arrests. They've been around it. They can really get down and explain everything there is. So have the parents have a really good understanding and what to look for and educate them. We also go to the high school where we have impact students, where we try to train them become a mentor to work with our junior hires. A lot of times the kids get in junior high, they tend to not necessarily look at adults and really want to believe everything we say, but they might listen to an older student.
Yeah, when I was in 7th grade, I knew everything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And with that, it'd be that positive influence and to work with that. And we encourage our high school kids to develop groups within the schools that are positive, and to be involved with some of our outreach groups and educate kids and bring programs obviously to their schools to help them.
What we've also talked about is that there really are two paths for somebody who's involved with drugs to be on. If you don't get off of them, you either die or you end up in jail.
Yeah.
And then you may still die.
Yeah.
But the end of those paths are not a good thing at all.
No. And you're absolutely right. But if we can save them, and sometimes it takes a family,
Yeah.
And also the village thing, it brings everybody in, the resources of school, law enforcement, and a lot of times these kids, or even adults, if they don't want the help, they keep pushing away. But if we start early enough.
So the teachers tend to know the differences in the behavioral changes of the kids in their class. And then what do? Do they come to you and they say, you know, notice some changes in these kids, and then what do you do?
Usually the teachers, first they'll usually contact their assistant principal or their principal.
Okay.
For instance, Silverado High School is a very small school, so they usually go to them first, and then my office is there, and they'll say, hey, we want you to come talk to someone, we think maybe he's under influence. So I usually talk to the teacher real quick and try to get some background. Okay, have you seen him act this way before? And just get a little background, then I'll bring the kid in my office and we'll talk. And the same thing, I'll start looking at the eyes. Eyes usually are the key when it comes to alcohol or drugs. You can tell. And look, after that, do a few field sobriety tests just to see. And then I'll just ask them, hey, did you take something? And obviously, being a deputy sheriff on campus, some kids, I'm not talking to a cop, are you kidding? But I used to tell them it's for your safety, especially when it comes to synthetic drugs again and pills. Kids just take pills not knowing what it can do, and they start mixing it with something else, then it can cause death or you know. And so I used to tell them, hey, I'm only asking right now is for your health and your safety. And if I need to start getting county fire there to start come in and get you to the hospital, I say right now we're not doing anything criminally. You know, and I'll document it along with the school, and we'll send it to our juvenile investigators for the city, along with the juvenile bureau for the department. And if they want to pursue it, they'll pursue it. But main thing is the safety at the time. That's the whole thing. A lot of it too is just they get upset when parents are not knowing, because parents aren't involved. That's what really gets it, parenting. I think parents. We live in a great society, but I think parents are lacking a little bit when it comes to reality. I mean, they're trusting their kids, which you want to, but they need to, you know, really get more involved. Parents need to just, spot check a kid. Where are you going this weekend? I'm going here. Show up. And make sure you can explain to your kid, hey, they're going to get more respect than anything if they do it, in my opinion. So parenting is also key.
What advice would you give to parents?
Stay involved with their kids. Kids, like I said, my oldest is 12. He's at the point where I can walk over here on my own. That's fine. You can walk 10 feet in front of you, you know? It's got to stay involved with them. Know who their friends are. If they're going to go out, everyone's going to come to that thing one day where, hey, Dad, I want to go to the movies, and they're 13. Okay, who are you going with? That's where you're starting to parent. If you've never met the kid, okay, I want to know the parents, I want to meet the parents, I want phone numbers, I want addresses, that way I want to go over and meet them.
I think the more open communication, the better. That if you're having dinner, you want to start broaching the topic of just moving from childhood to pre-adolescence. I think the transition from elementary to junior high school is pretty incredible, because you have obedient children who now are into peer acceptance and really want to be liked, so they're going to try to be cool. So you begin to see some changes. I'm looking at more drastic changes where you see that a child is now identifying where, again, they're being much more oppositional, they're being defiant, they're starting to challenge your authority, they're raising their voice, they're threatening to get physical, they run away. They do a number of those behaviors that a parent shouldn't be ignoring. I think it's important that either, if you're not having family meetings where you're just openly having discussions about your concerns and raising those concerns, you have the option of looking for professional help. And I think families tend to minimize or not recognize that that's just an automatic avenue available to you to just go and have an outsider raise any issues that you might be missing or not looking at, to help not only the parent but also help the child begin to recognize concerns that parents have. So when we look at legal rights and responsibilities, if a parent says, I'm concerned that you're not going to school, and the child is saying, what's the big deal? Well, if they bring an attendance record and there's truancy, chronic truancy, then we're going to address that. So a therapist is definitely going to say, let's look at, again, what are your rights and what are your legal responsibilities and rights as a minor, and then what are those of your parent. So let's see if we can have a discussion about what does the law say that your parents are entitled to do, and what rights do you have in terms of what the law says in regards to being underage. And the law says you must go to school. If you don't, then if there's a pattern and there's a chronic problem, you're going to be referred to truancy court. So in Orange County, we have collaborative courts. So once you've been given a referral, now you're actually having to appear before a judge. So again, it's helpful to kind of look at prevention. And prevention starts with just open communication with your children. You should be having an open discussion about just issues around rules, expectations, chores, allowances, the right to be able to know who your friends are, to be able to call those parents to make sure if you're going to go to a party and you're a 7th grader or an 8th grader, is there parental supervision? You have the right to say, you can't go unless I call that person's parent and I need reassurance that either they have volunteers or there will be parents who will provide that supervision. Often you think that's the case, and then you hear that indeed there was no parent present, and it became a free-for-all.
We had a police chief 2 years ago that the Walk Against Drugs event, and he stood up and he's like, I don't know, 6'4", 6'5", he's very tall. And he stood up and he said, he just told all the parents, there were, I don't know, 3,000, 4,000 people sitting in the stands, and he said, parents, you need to be parents. They don't need you to be their friend, they need you to be their parent. You can be their friend when they're older. I'll never forget that. I thought, yeah.
So I concur with what the police chief was saying, is that you can be friendly, but don't become a friend. And I think I see in the program a number of children who believe that they can override, veto their parents, challenge them, and it's like beginning to realign the family to say there's just a mom and a dad, there's adult decisions that are made, there's going to be certain decisions that are given to you that you have to accept, and there's other issues that you can negotiate and contribute, but you don't have the final say. And I think often, I find with parents is it's time to address your own dynamics and your own issues. If your child says that you're using or abusing, you need to look at that and begin to do something about it. The one boy that I know is struggling with, there's domestic violence. The mother also uses. So she became addicted to pain medication. So I think for him it's been a struggle because now he is being forced, if you will, because probation made him come to rehab. But he said, my parent has used, and she starts her recovery and then she relapses. So that triggers me to want to use. And so if she can, then why should I? I had one child who's a surfer, and he said, my dad has medicine. I'm in rehab, I've been sober for 3 months, and we go surfing, and he left his medicine in the car, and he said, the first time I walked away from it, he said the second time I was so tempted that I just went ahead and took some of the medication. But at least we can work with that. At least we know, once we talked to the parent, he said, I had no idea. I was foolish not, and he said, please put it in a locked, secure area, because the temptation is so strong for me that I'm not yet capable to walk away. Did it once, but then wasn't able the second time.
Gentleman from San Clemente, a wonderful man, has son Joey, who had suffered with addiction and had been clean and sober and had gone out with his friends in the city of Orange and was getting high with his friends in a hotel room apparently, and he started to overdose, and his friends panicked and put him in a car and drove him from Orange all the way to Junipero Serra, and dumped his body under a no dumping sign, and did call for help a couple of times. And we have the tapes, the 911 tapes on the film, and hung up because they said, will you be there? And that was the start. That was part of the process of getting the 911 law into effect in the state of California. Vernon Porter's daughter, worship pastor here in Orange County, his daughter was left in a room for 13 hours, left to die while the party continued. They didn't want to call, cleaned up the house the next day, and then called for help. In the meantime, she had been dead all those hours. So the 911 law was instituted in January of this year, which says that anybody that's overdosing or around someone overdosing can pick up the phone, call for help, and without fear of arrest or prosecution, because the purpose of that law is not to advocate drug use, it's to save a life. So that happened through a lot of the press and a lot of the parents gathering together and we highlighted in the film. And
You've also brought in a lot of drug tests into your home because you've told your daughter, right? And Brianne's never tested positive, probably never will, because she knows.
I've never had to test her, but the rule in the home is any guy she dates has to go into the bathroom and pee in a cup, and I want to see him do it because I'm not letting her out the door. So she said she's going to get a t-shirt that says "Forever Alone."
And it's because you've said one thing to her, and you told me this when I first met you. You've told her that you would rather, what is it, you'd rather be in jail, alive in jail, than to go to her funeral.
Exactly.
And that was you have made it so one of the most important things in your life is to make sure that your daughter does not get involved in drugs. And then you've broadened it, because now you've talking to her friends' parents, and all this, and then of course the film. Is there anything now, looking back on that you would have done differently?
I would have limited time with friends. I would have been more vigilant of who they were hanging out with, what they were doing when they were hanging out with friends, getting to know parents, better. And I think, listening to teachers. I think teachers are the ones that I think have the first insight I think teachers have more insight to a child at risk to do drugs before a parent can even open their eyes to see that. Instantly, you can't fix it. So you have to, I think, remove yourself from the situation and step out and say, I can't fix this, I can't fix him, and that's hard for moms. Yes. I can't love him through it. I wanted so badly to love him through it, and I couldn't. I just couldn't. So finding that group of people that could kind of take over was the best thing that we did. But for a lot of parents, it's don't be naive. If you're the parent that says my kids will never do drugs, you probably need to arm yourself with some resources and maybe get a new mindset. I think it's safer to assume your child is going to do drugs and do some parenting based on that so that you can navigate them in the opposite direction. But our boys played sports. Our boys were on sports teams.
They were always busy.
They were always busy. Don't keep it, I think for parents, is don't keep it a dirty little secret because fear can only live in the dark, right? It can't live in the light. So when you put it out in the light and expose it, you remove the fear of it and you remove the stigma of it, and you can get more help that way.
Right.
Whether it is from family, whether it's from your church, or whether it's from, people, like Gil and Alicia that we met at Phoenix House. When you don't hide it, it makes it a little bit easier to kind of deal with and eventually laugh about. Hopefully you have to be able to see that there's going to be, future. I'm not the one addicted, to drugs. So the devastation, I kept trying to put it on me. Why? It's not me, it's on him, and I can't be the center of attention in this. I need to let the focus be on Tanner and the healing be on Tanner and, the onus on him. And I need to focus on me in a different way. Keep my life going, make my life better, keep my cup full, keep my relationship with my husband intact, and focus on those things and not get sucked into the misery of what addiction is.
What would you tell somebody your age, you're in your age group, what would you tell some kids that are either have been tempted to get into using pot, any sort of drugs or whatever, what would you tell them?
That if you haven't started using right now, then it's probably not a good idea to start, because you're going to lose your money, your family, and you're going to end up getting locked up.
And you're still alive to tell that, which
Yep.
is pretty much of a miracle, right, Mom and Dad?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When you see the problem, you recognize it, like Tanner got caught at school, I would say seek help immediately, because that's not the first time the kid has done the drugs. I guarantee you they've been doing it for a while before they get caught. So thinking, or your kid telling you that this is the first time I ever done it, I was experiencing, I guarantee it's a line of bull.
Mm-hmm.
And get help immediately.
You can't enable, you can't wish it away, you can't sweep it under the rug, you can't love them through addiction.
Yeah.
You have to have boundaries. The minute we had boundaries, things got a lot simpler.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you can't
And
use and live here.
It sounded like you needed help of the true teen and the counselors and that people that have gone through it. It sounded like you needed that to help you establish those boundaries. Is that true?
Oh yeah, and
Okay.
I have this moms group. We call ourselves the Epic Honey Badgers, and we have this moms group, and we go to each other first before. So if something was to come up, we have a Facebook group, and we go to that group, and then we get feedback from all of the moms, and it kind of keeps us strong from, wanting to do something we know is not going to benefit. It's hard. The mom heart is so hard, and we buy into all the Hallmark stuff. Mothers sacrifice their entire lives for their children. They'll do anything to show them love, and when you buy into that, you lose yourself.
Yeah.
And you're not helping.
Yeah.
If he's my universe, that's not going to help him.
Right.
But the whole adolescent treatment center or field is quite a bit different, because it takes about 17 years for your human brain to be developed. Humans only are born with about 20% of their brain at birth, which is quite a bit different than all other mammals and dogs and elephants and dolphins. They have about 80% of their brain at birth, and then it takes a couple of years to develop. But humans have such a large brain, it's 20%, and 80% has to grow in their first 17 years. So it's there and it's working, but the brain isn't really talking coordinated, it's not synchronized until about age 17. So if you use drugs actually before 17, it's much harder to reverse that than after 17. There's actually when scientists are doing studies on addicts, that they interview you and find out whether you started using drugs before 17 or after 17, and you're in two different groups. And we've known that too from even prescription drugs, like the prescription antidepressants are very powerful mind-altering drugs. There's a big difference between giving an antidepressant to somebody less than 17 than after 17. It's huge. There's all these reports about it going backwards, and actually people become more suicidal. There's a large percentage of people when they're teenagers, they take an antidepressant, they become suicidal. And the same drug, you try it on them later on in their 30s, it's fine, it helps. So our brains are different below 17. You got to be really careful at any age.
It does explain a lot about teenage behavior, doesn't it?
Yeah, right.
It does.
So the success is actually really seriously enjoying life without a chemical and getting a spiritual connection, which is really hard to define. I mean, it's different for different people, and they describe it different ways. And people feel like they're connected to the ocean, and that's their source of a higher power. And there's different religions, but it's different than religion. Spirituality is getting a real purpose and meaning in life. You wouldn't drink gasoline if it was here, right?
No.
Well, why not? Well, because it'll kill me, and I'm powerless over that. Of course. Well, if there was alcohol, would you drink it? I don't know. Maybe. Probably. Yeah. Well, when you finally get recovery, your response to drinking gasoline or drinking alcohol is going to be the same. If you think there's a difference, you're probably going to drink again. We've developed facilities, and we can triage people, patients that are calling that don't have insurance. We can triage them to facilities that are pretty economical or even free. housing even for free for people temporarily, things like that. 12 steps is for free.
I have 2 kids in college. I'm quite sure that they've experienced a variety of substance, but it's not part of their life. I have a younger son who we talk frequently about it. He tells me what's out there. He tells me when he goes to parties what he sees. I'm sure he is himself has been involved to some degree, but not to a significant degree, but we talk about it. I would have no hesitation if I were a parent and concerned about having my son or daughter drug tested. I think as you have to be a parent, you know, you have to take control and take charge, and you have to act as a parent. You can't abdicate that responsibility. If you do, then you have to accept the consequences. And so I think you have to look. I would look in rooms and drawers and look for paraphernalia and look for foil or pipes. I would look in the ashtray of the car and look for the remnants of pot, or it's called a roach. I would smell their clothing. If your son or daughter puts cologne on at 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning, that's a clue, okay? So, or if the windows of their car are down, you know, you have to sort of look and use some intuition here, and know who their friends are, and know who their friends' parents are. It's interesting because the medications you would assume are obtained from a doctor. You would assume that these medications are obtained from a physician. So somebody goes to the doctor, gets a prescription, and that's what they're taking. But that's really less than 10 to 12% of the time. The vast majority of substances obtained from friends or from other people, or from parents' cupboards, medicine cabinets, friends' parents' medicine cabinets. Of course, there are pill mills and there are the internet, but the majority of them are not coming directly. That doesn't mean physicians are not responsible or haven't acted responsibly. That's another issue. But and go to the doctor with your son or daughter. The issue is that you have to simply say to the parent, your son or daughter is using X, Y, or Z. It's positive on a tox screen. But the biggest part of this is to try to get them to refrain from being angry, because being angry or having anger with your 16 or 17-year-old is not productive. It's more it causes more separation. And so I tell parents, I said, look, it is what it is. There is a problem, but it's time to put one foot in front of the other and let's move forward. Let's figure this out. Let's see what we can do to prevent a bigger problem. But we do have behavioral care personnel. We have social services available. We have the county mobile psychiatric team. So we do have resources available, and we try. Now, many of these kids are admitted to the hospital, and a lot of that education goes on in the hospital. But unfortunately, a lot of these are also repeat offenders. So you may see somebody who's had 6, 8, 10 stints in rehab who are back. And so, you know, the opposite of judgment is compassion. And so one has to remind themselves to be compassionate about this issue. These are good kids. I mean, these are smart kids. They're sweet kids. They're friendly. You know, just because they may have earrings or pegs or tattoos does not put them in a category of not being an upstanding human being. And you can't lose sight of that. You have to realize that these are somebody's child, somebody's brother, and offer them that compassion and that care and try to help them. You know, I'm often asked as a parent, how do I prevent this from happening? Yeah. How do I? First of all, It's keep making it an open issue. It's talking about it. It's sitting down, not in an accusatory fashion, but in a questioning. Educate me on, these kids know a lot. They have a lot of information. Have a conversation so the parents become educated. Look at the internet and see what's out there. Keep your kids busy. Keep them involved. Keep them in clubs. Keep them in sports. Keep them in activities where they don't have time to lay around and smoke pot or to be exposed to some of these things. Make sure that they have quality friends. And they may not understand what a quality friend is, but that's important as a parent to teach them what a quality friend is and what a friend will do and will not do. And as I mentioned, know where they're going, know where they've been, be suspicious, but be open and have a dialogue and try to avoid being judgmental. You know, I asked my son, if you were drinking and driving, and would you drive home? He said, no, I wouldn't get in the car. I said, would you call me? He said, no, I wouldn't call you. And I said, why wouldn't you call me? He said, Dad, I wouldn't want to disappoint you. And so from that conversation, we've had a lot of open conversations about what would disappoint me. Getting the call from the coroner would be disappointing. But even more so, I said, call your Uncle Larry. Pick somebody that you can have, that you feel comfortable with having that conversation. It may not be the parent. It may be the substitute, but it's somebody.
Also understand that there's an epidemic facing their child, and I call it the heroin flu, because right after opiates moves to heroin, and the vaccine for this heroin flu is information.
You have to be aware of this. You have to understand that it's out there, and that, what you said, one bad choice. One bad choice.
We lose a life every 24 minutes in the United States to a prescription drug overdose. So in the time we sat here, somebody died.
Somebody's died.
So it's not something we can sweep under the rug anymore.
If you had one message for parents.
Oh, wow.
One message for parents, what would it be? What would you tell them?
Set an example. No punishment and no preaching is going to stop your kids from experimenting. And once you start experimenting, a lot of people think the game's over. Your speeches and your punishment isn't going to work once the brain chemistry has been altered with these powerful drugs. So I think setting an example of how to get high in life without taking a chemical, how to celebrate without, how to party without a chemical, how to get married and go to a wedding reception without even a drink, and seriously enjoy it, how to dance and sing and power through the painful times and go to a funeral without a chemical. You know, people forget that you can actually do all those things without a chemical. And kids, I think, need to have an example that you can seriously enjoy life without a chemical.
Sometimes I start the day with a letter like this. Never in a million years did I see myself being in the place I'm in today. I started using heroin when I was 14 years old. I had no idea what I was getting myself into at the time. And from that time on, my life would never be the same. I'm a really strong person, but heroin addiction eats you up, and there is an invisible line you cross where heroin becomes the most important thing in your life. Written by a 20-year-old who said that I could use that.
It can be cured, you know, if we all get together and work on it together.